Welcome everyone to the January 12th, 2023 Helm Developer Call. That's right, we're in 2023. It is the future. Today we have an announcement and one topic. And the announcement is we have a release candidate for Helm 3.11 out, but nobody should use it because we found a regression in it. And the regression has to do with whether you're requesting a table response or a regular object response from the Kubernetes API. And there's sometimes where we are expecting a regular object and it's now a table, and that's causing chaos. I actually have a fix for this written, but the reason we didn't catch it before is our testing framework doesn't give us what we need to test it. And so I started working on writing like decent tests for it, but that's going to take longer than I would probably like. And so if I'm not able to get it done by the end of today, I will push up the fix, missing the ability to test it because we just don't need, I can't go write a test today, given our current framework. I'll push the fix up otherwise and continue the testing work outside of that to bring in later if I can't get it by the end of the day, because I'd really like to get the next release candidate cut tomorrow, if possible. And so that's kind of where I'm at on fixing this. It touched a bunch of files. This was actually introduced when we went towards being able to show resources again. And there was a subtle change in there that caused the problem, and fixing it is a bigger change. But we are, again, I have it fixed. I want tests if I can. And so that's where this one sits. I will announce when there's an RC2 out, and hey, release candidates show they work. And so that's all I had on 3.11 and the regression. Does anybody have any other announcements? There is another one that I forgot. We're getting notified about KubeCon EU session. And we need to organize folks around a KubeCon EU session if folks are going to go and do something. And I don't have that in front of me, but I'm sure the deadline's coming up quick to get this in.
Is it the actual like presentation masses or just names?
I think it's the maintainer track session. If we scroll back, I think Karina put details in a meeting in recent weeks.
Yeah.
I think that was.
I think we have like 2 weeks left to get the list of maintainers and the general topic to CNCF.
Does anybody on this call want to have a separate? My thought was we could go through the survey results and identify what people are, asking about, or just kind of some patterns, and then we can take that and use that for the presentation. What do you think? But I haven't dove into it yet.
I think it's going to depend on who's going to be there to do the presentation, and I would discuss it with them. And I'm not sure whether I will be there yet or not.
Samesies. Do we think Martin's likely to be there? Because EU.
Let me ask him. I will ping him in a side channel here.
Is anybody else on this call going to be there?
I will be there, Andy.
I have to be there.
All right. So I pinged Martin. I'm not sure. If those of you who know you're going to be there want to start wrangling something, and anybody else who plans on being there or thinks they might, reach out to Karina and Mr. Block there, and we will get it worked out. Sound good? And next week we should circle back on this, so that way we make sure something's moving, and if there's anybody else that needs to be involved. All right. then with that, we can go into our discussion topics. And Bridget, you have one here, the only one, which is about voting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I was looking at the Helm community repo
Yes.
because it had been 800 bajillion years since I'd been here. So I didn't even have the link to the meeting notes handy. And when I went over there, I happened to notice we had a PR that's been languishing since September. And it's a PR that's subtle but important, I think, which is we don't have for the sub projects like say Helm dub dub dub, we don't have a Helm dub 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 maintainer list. So the stated procedure for how we discuss nominees is not valid because there isn't a place to do it. And this mostly recently came up when we added a maintainer to Helm dub 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 recently. And the point that was made of like, oh, but perhaps this should be discussed on the maintainer list. And then it was dropped and this has been sitting here since September. So I was just thinking, perhaps we should just look at this and say, either we want CNCF to give us maintainer lists for every sub project that brings us to the hip about cleaning up sub projects, et cetera, or maybe it's not necessary to have a maintainer list for every sub project. Maybe it's fine to just have, discussion amongst the people involved with that sub project, and then they announce their, determination. One way or the other, I don't particularly care, but I think it should be defined and fixed because right now the documented voting procedure is not possible to follow.
Yeah, so this needs the org maintainers to vote on it in order for it to pass. And so I will take the action to send this off to that list and bug people. So that way we can get it. It's not one of those things we can do lazy consensus. So
Sure.
I will take the action after this call when I'm in one of my any other meetings, only sort of paying attention, and fire this off to that list and start bugging people.
Wonderful. That sounds great. Again, I don't care which direction we go. I just think we should just disambiguate it so we can move forward and close this.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have anything else that we need to discuss? Oh, I see George added stuff. All right. Well, George,
Sorry.
let's get into your stuff here.
I'm on the train, so I'll try to be very brief. Be delayed, but there's one PR which looks good to me. I stuck there in the doc. It's pretty small. It's just sorting endpoints. The other thing that I was going to bring up is a bunch of issues that come in which are related to subcharts. I didn't really triage them all very well, but I don't know if anybody has any thoughts around something may have changed in that area or anything like that. I can continue to dig to look into them, but yeah, if anybody has any thoughts, that'd be great. I think to kick that off.
Yeah, subchart stuff I'd have to go look at. I haven't looked at it in long enough for some of these that I don't know. It's been a while. I need to come back into context. I know the first one you put there, you said a PR looks good to you, but I'm not, it's linked to an issue. The global value is not available.
Oh, I must paste the right thing. Let me go back. I also had bad internet for a while, so hurry.
It's all right. Yeah, this is one of those things like alias grandchildren not being implied in the. Yeah, there's some complexities we need to go look at. Some things are intentional and some things are probably bugs. And aliases are kind of a very weird space just because of the way the templating system out of the Go template system works, right? Everything's in one sandbox. And so how do we handle with aliasing and then the names of your template files, right? So if it's in one sandbox, you run into interesting problems. But we can't change that until Helm v4 because it would be API breaking.
So I still trying to locate this issue.
Okay. Yeah, this is one of those things that I think I'm gonna have to dig through offline. I probably can't speak super intelligently to this system right now. Naming subchart based on. Yeah, the pull request will need the update naming subchart based on the dynamic parent charts created with alias. Chart name. Okay.
So that PR's there. Something
Okay, yeah, I'll have to go through this one because some of this common. Yeah, so they're asking some interesting questions about multiple use here, and I'll have to go poke at this. All right. Yeah, I'll see if I can find some time, but it probably won't be till next week to go poke at these, just because I'm dealing with that regression right now. But there's probably other maintainers who, if they've got time, could take a look.
I also stuck another issue relating to the handling of plugins and URIs. Sorry, it's really noisy.
Yeah. So the proposal handle URI correctly according to the RFC. Okay. Probably share my screen. Just so everybody has the context on this. Right, you should be able to see it. So we have the handle URI correctly according to the RFC. Let's see, what do we got? Yeah, we'll have to look at this handling here for it, because one of the things is we have to maintain backwards compatibility no matter what. And make sure we don't introduce any regressions. If there was a way to handle something that would be RFC compliant for URI handling, I don't know that we'd have a problem with it. It would just have to be obviously completely backwards compatible and not introduce regression. So we'd want some good tests around it. But I don't see a problem with this proposal.
I think this may actually be quite a small change.
This may be a what change?
To a lot of this big wall of text here describing the problem, and then I think it boils down to like a conditional. If you scroll down some, I think there's like a partial implementation that might be linked. I can't remember where it is, but yeah, there's like a if statement you can stick in, which is like if opaque, then part of the other branch.
And we've got to think. So some of this, right? We've got OCI, HTTP, HTTPS file, those kinds of things. There are also plugins that add things like S3, right? S3 is one. There's a bunch of external plugins. Those also need to work the same with our handling, right? And so the handling has to be backwards compatible, even when you extend it with new protocols, right? Even when you extend it for S3 is going to be my biggest example because I know that's in use. That all needs to work the same thing without regression. And if we can support everything without regression, then I don't know that I see a problem with it. If there's going to be any regressions, then it has to wait till Helm 4.
Understood.
In fact, even waiting till Helm 4 becomes maybe a little bit of a problem because you can specify things in charts as dependencies. And if that can't be backwards compatible, right? Because when we go to Helm 4, every single darn chart that works with Helm 3 should work with Helm 4. We like to keep that backwards compatibility because if you break things, you've now broken the ecosystem on update. And it becomes very hard when you break the ecosystem. We'll have people hunting us down if we break the ecosystem. We're not at a place where we want to, willy-nilly break the software and expect everybody to adapt on certain things. And chart compatibility is one of those places that people live and die on. That's why we still support even our oldest deprecated forms of charts now, because that helped us bring people along. And so this really does need to continue to work and pass tests. All right. But if it does, I don't see an issue. Well, let's see, then there's a question. Helm template dry run mode. Okay. So this is one of the things that we discussed, what was it, last week? Where we talked about the dry run mode.
Hello.
Hello?
So yes, so it's my first time in this meeting. So hello. I've posted comments on this issue on the, but I was not in the meeting the last time. Sorry.
Okay.
So my point here is Helm use the dry run option, but the dry run option does not do the same thing as kubectl does. And most of users that use Helm come from kubectl. So having the same option, but that does not do the same thing is really strange. And when I was using Helm and I was using dry run, I was confused because for example, the lookup function is the main.
Yeah, so I can add some context here. So the reason dry run operates the way it does has to do with feedback from one of our security reviews, where we had a third-party audit and we had to cut off the external communications during some of this based out of the feedback from them. Last week's call, or it was a recent one of our developer calls, we talked about the idea of we're not going to modify the dry run flag as it is today because it now has certain expectations and we don't want to break backwards compatibility. But we're open to adding an additional flag in that would allow it to contact the server on dry run. And that flag could either be a dry run flag that's in addition to the existing one to tell it to connect, or just another flag altogether that says do dry run and connect. We are open to pull requests that implement this capability. We don't have it today, but this is something we're open to. And we discussed it in a recent call. So if somebody wants to go do that, they can. What?
I think we talked about adding, like making it dry run equals server or equals client, right? So default would be client, but you could like that the dry run gets an argument, just like kubectl has, right? Which should be compatible.
As long as somebody using -- dry run automatically does client without having to put anything after it, the flag has to remain the same in the command line and be backwards compatible. Anything has to be additive. So if somebody has to change their use of the dry run command, then that has to wait till Helm 4 because we have to maintain that
Yeah.
backwards compatibility. So yes, we're open to allowing server side connect if somebody wants to go do that, as long as the flag stays. People using the flag today don't have to change anything to have the existing behavior, and whatever it is additive.
So I had a look at the way that kube control did it. I think we can change the existing flag, but either or. Like if we have to end up with a different flag because we can't keep it backwards compatible, then sure. But I think we can. But
Okay.
if you want him to Quentin, I think it was, if you want to peer on this, I was also starting to look at implementing this.
So yes, today if you use a dry run with a kubectl, it pops you a warning which telling it's deprecated. Use dry run equal client or dry run equal server, and I think we can do the same. Which if you just
You can't do that in Helm. You can't do that in Helm. I'm sorry to say. We can't tell them it's deprecated, do something else, because we don't deprecate and break that. We have a policy on that. Kubernetes doesn't follow semantic versioning, and will break things along the way, and they're okay with that. And on Helm, we don't have that same level of breaking things within a major version. We have a policy against it, and people always get upset with Kubernetes doing this. It breaks scripts on people all the time, and they need to go update. And with Helm, we're adding an extra level of stability on there on purpose. So
Okay.
we won't do that warning people they need to make a change. Not until Helm 4.
So the basic usage is if you use dry run, it will be dry run equal client, and that's the same thing. And if you use dry run equal server, you send your object to the Kubernetes API, and you use the lookup function. Because my point on this is I understand the security issue, but in the end, when you ask, oh, I want to do a lookup function with Helm because it's cool, and it's not working with dry run, all people respond to you, oh no, don't do that. Use kubectl get with any permission, then in a bash script, then add them to your on file, then run it, and in the end, it's way worse than just allowing to get.
When you think about the security option, it also comes down to people not realizing what's being done with dry run and what might be picked up on their system. And so there are certain things where somebody may do something where they unwittingly leak something. And it had to do with things around that, not for somebody knowingly wanting to get to the server, but for people not realizing it connects to the server and doing something that unwittingly leaks information, possibly in their production environment. And so there's lots of ways to look at security on this. And this was a third-party threat analysis that we worked with on it. I remember the summary of it. I don't remember the deep details.
But one thing that comes to my mind here is, what does the DNS lookup function do in a dry run case?
I don't remember offhand.
Okay. Would have the same problem, right? Even worse, because you can even specify, an attacker could specify its own domain there.
Yeah, and well, this is one of those things where it had to do with the security analysis. We'd have to go back to the review if somebody wants to get into depth on it, and then I could look up the conversations we had with them. But it was we've had 2 formal analysis, and it was out of one of those audits that this came from. Bridget, do you know if it was the second one or the first one?
I think this may have been in the second one. I mean, time has lost all meaning, and we are in March 8,000, 2020, but I think it's the link I just put in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, and if somebody wants to have further context around it, I can probably dig up the discussions we had with the folks who did the analysis, because this is one of those places where we went into a little bit further depth on.
I was going to say
and also
there's
that blog post also has a link to the previous audit. So that link,
Okay.
which I will also put in the notes, should cover it. Go ahead.
I linked in that proposal that I stuck on that issue. There is another issue related to dry run printing secrets. And the reason people don't like this is that they do Helm dry run in their CI and then they get all their secrets printed to the output, which is a different thing. But if you enable lookup this, it would make this worse because you do high Helm dry run server, Helm template dry run server, and you would end up with your existing secrets in the cluster printed to your CI system, or if this is attacker controlled somewhere else. So I think that's the rough crux of the issue, that you can, if you contact the server, you can use the template to extract secrets from the cluster.
Yes, but in the end, there is another issue today. If you use some custom security policy on your Kubernetes, so you disallow root container running. If you run with dry run, it will be sent to the validation API of Kubernetes, and it will say to you, you can't apply this file, but Helm doesn't do that. So today, for example, we are using Helm in.
So I understand your concerns. We're just giving you the background on why things are the way they are today. And I don't think we should focus on that. This went through security audits with people who know far more about security than any of us on the phone or on the call here today, who have thought through situations and the types of users we have and the situations, because quite often the people who use the charts and run these commands aren't the people who created the charts. And quite often they're not Kubernetes diehard experts. Right? It's not like, I think of somebody picking up a Linux system and they know all about the system and everything that goes on in that system, right? They aren't the same as your typical Kubernetes or your typical Linux user who's just going in trying to get a handful of things done. They use things like apt and zipper and other things to go and install packages, and they don't know how those packages are bundled up or what's going on in there. They just trust the security model around how this has happened and what's going on. They're not expert users of this. And that's how most package managed users are across every platform. And so we can't treat these folks, many of them who are using these commands, as being Kubernetes experts who understand the intricacies of everything going on. And so there's a lot of security implications wrapped up in those assumptions. And it's a pretty in-depth topic. And so we don't expect them to be security experts or Kubernetes experts and those kinds of things. But what I think we should work on is we do have a path forward, and we can work to that path forward because it's a method for people to opt in and say, yes, I know this is going to contact the server. And by doing that, they're opting in, they realize what's going on, and we're okay with adding that capability as long as everything works in a backwards compatible manner, both within our SDK and within our CLI options.
Okay, so as there is many issues related to that, did I create a new issue that resuming this on proposing so what we say here with a specific proposal? Or do you have a caps like Kubernetes?
We have HIPs. This is one of those things that I don't think we need a HIP for. There is a proposal at the end from 2 weeks ago for updating the dry run flag. We can probably do that and then route anything that needs to connect to the server through this additional option. And it's probably okay.
If you'd like to peer on this, I'm willing to spend some time trying to implement. I think it was Quentin, was that?
Yes.
I just lost on Zoom.
Stop.
Hey. Yeah. Do you want to reach out to me on Slack? I'm in the Helm Dev channel if you want to try and look at this.
Okay.
All right. We are already a few minutes over, and that was the last item. So in the background, we need moderator notes, issue triage, and those sorts of things. Do we have, I see Karina has signed up for some stuff, possibly. Does anybody else want to jump in?
I can do triage.
Thank you, George. I believe I can do moderator again next week, or notes. Karina, you and I can discuss and figure it out.
Sounds good.
All right,
Alright.
then I believe that's it. All right, everyone. Thanks for sticking around an extra few minutes. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right.